have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Hello everyone, welcome to this conversation. I'm excited to be with a good friend and a mentor of mine, and has taught me a lot about becoming a chiropractor, and he didn't even know he was teaching me anything.
But I remember a few things.
yeah, I bet you do. But I'm here with Dr. Tom Stotz, and Dr. Stotz has been in the profession for many, many years and just has recently retired. And one of the things I think is so important for us as chiropractors is that we can't forget our roots. We can't forget our history. We got to use our history to really trampoline us into the future and continue to protect what we do for so many people. So Tom, we'll start there. Just start with your history. How did you get into chiropractic? Where are you from?
Well, I have a kind of a unique history. My wife and I come from McLaughlin, South Dakota. As a youngster, I was sick all the time. My mom said I threw up 3 to 5 times a week in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the middle of the night. Not until I got into chiropractic care did that turn around for me. The asthma quit, and I was able to breathe, and I was able to participate in sports. But another thing that happened to me that proved to me that the nervous system is powerful is I saw a girl in a motorcycle accident on our main street, which was gravel, and she was bleeding, and I went blind. I went blind for about 20 minutes. And I know that Julie's brother came up to me, and you could feel the air going by my face because he thought I was lying. But I was really blind for that long, and I came around. So it gave me the idea that the nervous system is so powerful, and that gave me another reason to get in. By the time I was in the 8th grade, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor. So I was very blessed with that. There are a lot of people don't make decisions very early. I knew it by the 8th grade.
Who was your chiropractor?
I started out with a chiropractor in Mandan, North Dakota, by the name of Newgard. He did the hole-in-one, but he was also enough of a chiropractor to realize that the ribs attached to the spine, and if I can't breathe, I need to have those adjusted, and that always helped me every time I went there. Mandan was 90 miles away. We went 3 times a week for a month, then every Saturday for some time before I finally started coming around. So wow. That's my story of how I got started. Graduated from National in '79. I think that it's important that everybody have a mentor. I started out with Dr. Jim Green in Vermilion, and when I came away from that 2.5 years later, I felt that I had the experience of someone that had 5 to 7 years of practice, not just a couple, because of what he taught me. And I think it's very important for young doctors to choose a mentor that they can visit with very closely, not somebody that's miles away, but just down the street. And so that's how I got started. I started my own practice in 1982. I went 30 miles away from Vermilion all the way to Yankton. And at that time, interest rates were 18.5% interest. Wow. I think that leaders have to take risks. And I took a risk at 18.5% interest at $28,000 I borrowed for my equipment. But I also believed in myself. There's this, if you have a concept and you believe in that concept, you can achieve that if you're willing to do the hard work. So that's where I started. Subsequent to that, after a few years, the economy wasn't very good in the 80s. And I watched some of my medical colleagues take their business out to the satellites. So I started thinking about a vision of having multiple clinics. And the first person that came along with me was Dr. Jim Fitzgerald. And he came in 1993. We established our first satellite clinic over in Scotland, South Dakota. And his wife, Sheila, joined us later that year. Subsequent to that, my son TJ came and did a preceptorship when I actually had a spinal infection and couldn't practice for 7 weeks. And then he started to practice with us. And in TJ's, in September of 2010, he opened up a satellite in Bloomfield, Nebraska. So now we got Yankton, Scotland, and Bloomfield. Okay. Then later on, subsequent to that, Dr. Matt Erlinson, a son-in-law of Jim Fitzgerald, joined in September 2016, and then we started a practice over in Hartington, Nebraska in 2017, and then his wife joined, which is Jim and Sheila's daughter. Subsequent to that, with all the regulations that we have these days, we decided that to be a group was important, and we merged with Dr. Jay Fitzgerald and his clinics. So then now we had Yankton, Scotland, Bloomfield, Hartington, Wagner, and Tyndall. And that's our story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. Okay, so talks about your chiropractic journey. Now, part of that also, I want you just to speak for a second. You've been very active in our state. You've been active in our state association. You've been active on our board of examiners. And I'm very prideful of chiropractic in the state of South Dakota because I still think it's one of the best states for our profession. So speak to that just a little bit.
Well, you know, when I got appointed by Governor Janklow, who is one of my mentors, the thing I always tell about Governor Janklow and the interstate was supposed to be 55 miles an hour. He said even a slow learner can memorize the scenery between Kennebec and Kadoka. And so, good, you know, another part of leadership, you've got to have a sense of humor. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But when I became part of the Board of Examiners, we felt that we needed to do some things to make sure that we stood above the rest of the nation. And one of those was documentation. I insisted that we have a documentation class that was mandatory. And at that time, that's what we did in a couple different locations. John Card, Steve Hedrick, and myself, that was our mentorship that we wanted to provide towards the entire state of South Dakota. So that's how I got involved in the Board of Examiners. And of course, I've always been involved with the state as insurance relations and going to peer every year. And I think it's so important. I really have a concern that younger doctors are not participating in our state association. They're not participating in their local communities. You know, I started out in the JC organization. I was the 53rd president of the South Dakota JCs. I went on to be a national champion and a national vice president. I got to speak all over different parts of the country. I was assigned to Oregon, Mississippi, Missouri, Virginia, and Delaware. Got to speak in the international in Puerto Rico. So I've had a lot of opportunities for me to mentor other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now everyone listen knows why I wanted to interview him. Because what I want you to hear there is there's a lot of servant leadership. There's a lot of great leaders develop other leaders. I think it's a great sign of great leaders. And you look at what you've done with First Chiropractic. Yes. I mean, starting with one, branching and seeing that vision and just seeing the number of doctors. What you've done for our state and being in that leadership. So a lot of servant leadership there is what I hear.
Absolutely. You've got to get involved with serving your community as well as serving your patients. Yeah. You got to have compassion for your patients, but you got to take time to serve your community. I really feel that's important.
So let's transition.
Okay.
When you look at leadership of all of your pedigree of being, how many years as a chiropractor?
41.
41 years of being a chiropractor and everything you've done, not just for the patients, but developing your own business at the state level, at the national level, you've had the opportunity to see lots of leaders.
Yes, I have.
So what are some key attributes that you believe are important in great leaders?
I think that great leaders have to be able to give the people they lead an opportunity to grow. We talk about it in your organization here with Sidecar. You gotta do the training, mm-hmm. and it's so important that you give your people that work for you or that are under your leadership an opportunity to grow without making them feel like they're small.
Yeah.
You need to give them space to make mistakes, mm-hmm. and you give them time to learn how to become to their full potential. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. You know, I always also, one of the things I always said, you see, I've got the golden attitude on my lapel. Yeah. It's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude in life. And that's been my mantra for ever since I got involved in JCs. I always used to try to teach the people there that I was speaking to is that it didn't matter what degree you had. Just because I had a doctorate degree, it's your attitude and your work ethic that makes you successful. It's, what are goals? The game plan of accomplishing life successes.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. You gotta have those goals. But as far as leadership is concerned, and people that I through the years, I have to go back to Robert Schuller at the Crystal Cathedral. I just loved to listen to that man. Motivational, but also spiritual. Leaders in this state, Janklow, Governor Mickelson. I got to tell you Mickelson's story. When he got killed, that affected me. And I told my wife I'd always wanted a convertible, and a red convertible. And there was one on the parking lot down there, and I asked her permission, could I go down and lease that vehicle? Because there are things that might happen in our life and never get that opportunity. And that's what we did. We went and got that red convertible. And after I got done leasing it, I bought it because I wanted to keep on with that red convertible. So that's some of the things.
Yeah, I love it. So when you look at some other leaders, so you mentioned Bill Janklow,
Yep.
Governor Mickelson, Schuller, that took me back to my dad put me in front of the TV looking at the Crystal Cathedral. I remember as a little boy watching those. Who else in your life has been very important as part of your mentorship?
Well, as far as from the chiropractic profession, the FCB, the Faith, Confidence, Belief in Your Product, Service, and Ideas, Jimmy Parker.
Yeah,
absolutely. Jimmy Parker was one of them. Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah, he's a big attitude guy.
Yeah.
You need a checkup from the neck up, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Absolutely. In our own profession, people like Pete Stahl, people that were the pioneers, that John Shequin, some of these fellows that led our profession when, quite frankly, we were kind of second-class citizens. I know when I started my practice in Yankton, there was only one doctor that would take my phone call, and that was an orthopedist. And the only reason I think that happened is because I found a cancer in a hip, and I sent it right up to them, and they understood that I'm more than someone who just pops backs. So those types of leaders from the past, they are part of our profession here. Dr. Jancy, I was able to, so fortunate to go to National and to have him walk into your classroom in the middle of class when the teacher's trying to teach, and all of a sudden 45 minutes later you're just like this. Oh my goodness, this man is just outstanding. Brilliant. Just a tremendous speaker and knowledge. When he got frustrated, he'd go to the anatomy lab, let me show you. And he'd just dissect all the way down and just show you every artery, every nerve, every muscle attachment, everything. So
yeah, brilliant. Okay, so those are your chiropractic ones. Okay. How about outside of chiropractic? Who's been very meaningful to you in creating your leadership skills, and who's really mentored you?
Well, I would say that my first mentor that I can think of, from my experience in the JCs, was a guy by the name of Dick from Brookings. He was someone who showed me that no matter what's going on in your life, you can be successful, and you can take the time to be successful. You can do your job, plus you can go out and you can do the work to make sure that you're successful. So that was Dick Peterson from Brookings, was one of my first mentors as far as from that perspective. Locally, I know that some of the people that I had to work with professionally in the accounting business or the attorney business, they also were instrumental in forming where I'm at. Now, I do want to tell you that though my father, my father, quite admittedly, was an alcoholic. He was dysfunctional, but he taught me one lesson, and that was that. Again, I might get emotional here.
That's okay.
So, when he was in Korea, one of the things that he had to do was guard the prisoners of war, and they were to get the prisoners of war to dig trenches so that the soldiers would have cover. Well, he talked about this Army sergeant from New York who was gruff and mean and belittling and kicking people in the arse and couldn't get them to do what he wanted them to do. My dad went down to the bivouac, got a package of cigarettes, and then gave each one of those prisoners a cigarette, and then went and lit them. And while they're smoking their cigarette, he picked up the shovel.
Yeah.
Yep.
What a huge lesson.
Yeah.
What a huge lesson. So, and look at how emotional it makes you, but how impactful that is, because we need more leaders like that.
Yeah.
Even with their flaws, right? Because we all got them.
Yep.
You know, we all got them. Yep. So, okay, so, you know, one of the things before we went on camera here in this conversation, you had mentioned, don't ask me about my routine. So I'm not going to ask you about your routine because you've just told me so much about you and your routine.
Yes.
You're going to give back.
Absolutely.
You're never going to stop learning.
Yep.
The story you just told about your dad about lighting the cigarettes for those kinds of things are who you are and how you've instilled that in what you've done for our state, what you've done in your own family, what you've done in building all those practices and developing other leaders. So what I want you to hear from that is we got to give more than we get. You can never stop learning.
Correct.
You've got to surround yourselves with people smarter than you are, and you got to listen and quiet the ego.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, absolutely. The ego thing is something you got to put down here.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to listen to your people and understand what their perspective is, and try to understand what their perspective is. That listening type of absolute. I guess one of the proudest things that I have is that we've been married 45 years. And we have 3 kids that are very successful. TJ is in the practice, and then my son Michael is a family medicine doc up here, and his wife. And then my daughter has been a teacher up in Alaska. She went out to bush country for 4 years, where the only way you can get there is by airplane. I mean, I'm so proud of her too. So.
I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Okay, 45 years of marriage. What's the secret?
Keep your mouth shut.
I figured that was coming. Okay, so I want to switch gears again here too. I want to ask about, many people listening right now, I don't see myself as a leader. Where do I start? What would you tell them?
You start with your own personal growth. You've got to be putting the time into listening to tapes or listen to podcasts or reading books or those types of things to educate yourself, to raise your own level of knowledge and give you the self-confidence to be the person that you can become and to lead others. So I think that's the first step is that type of foundation.
I agree.
And then beyond that is, again, it's taking that servant leadership. It's also being able to allow your people to educate you. What do you see that we can do better, rather than my way or the highway? I really feel that you have to allow your people to brainstorm and bring ideas.
Yeah. Okay, so 41 years in practice, the thousands and thousands of people you've influenced. As we look at our profession today and we look at the next 40 years or the next 100 years, it's why I wanted to interview you today, because I don't want us to forget the very benefits and resources I have today, you didn't have.
Yes, absolutely.
And because of guys like you who said, I'm going to be that plow horse to go ahead, we still got a lot of work to do though.
Yes.
So what would you tell the listeners today? What was your encouragement to them to help us continue this great profession forward?
When I came out of school, I felt that we had an education that was on par level with the medical profession. The only difference was the fact that they got to get a lot of their training on hands-on in the hospitals and in clinics. And almost all of ours was in books until we got to work with our patients in 8th or 9th or 10th trimester. And so that was part of the educational background for us. As far as where I see the future, unless we as a profession continue to beat the drum, sound our horn, tell the people how good we are and how educated we are and how much we can help them on an alternative path to what they've learned through the media, popping pills, taking drugs, this potion, that potion, getting shot up, all that. There's an alternative to that, and there's an alternative to being sick. I mean, obesity is rampant in this country. There's no doubt about it. I could lose some pounds myself, but it's the education part. We got to the term physician means educator. That's part of it, and we got to educate our patients, but we got to educate the populace, the public.
And the beautiful thing about, as you talk about the education, the research continues to show the efficacy of what we do.
Correct.
And we've got to continue to invest in that and continue to do that, because that's the education that we bring to the public as a viable resource for what they're struggling with. So I just want to thank you for this time. Thank you for all the work that you've done for our profession.
I appreciate the opportunity, no doubt about that. So,
and I just want you, as you listen to this and Tom today, and think about, what can you do? What can you do to continue to be a better leader? What can you do to give back? What can you continue to do to make sure that this profession continues well into the future? So thanks again.
Thank you.
You bet.